Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Hey guys, so excited about today. If you've been listening, we've been having time with Jonny and Pietze talking about family, regulation, anxiety, resolving those things. It's been a really good conversation.
Yeah.
It's been something that's been healing for me and Abby just listening on this side.
Oh, I've had so many revelations and connections for my own life and language and tools for me in how I relate to myself. And I love this conversation because the more you hear about what healthy and powerful parenting can look like, it really helps you understand your internal world and where you had emotions and got stuck, and then can give you tools. I was thinking, so today we're going to talk about regulation, parents helping their kids understand regulation, but really this is a conversation that's going to help you figure out how to regulate your own emotions. It's going to help you. Jonny, do you want to share your thing about bonding?
I mean, I think that when you are a child, your relationship with your parent, that's a primary attachment relationship, which is like a para-bonding, a natural biological thing that happens. And in adulthood, that transfers oftentimes to a best friend or to a sibling or to a spouse or a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. And so if you don't have kids, I think that this episode would be really helpful to listen to and think through these concepts when the person that is your primary attachment is not being regulated. If they're spinning out.
If we're talking about Pietze's kids being dysregulated, you might just think of your husband or your boyfriend or your mom or your sister or your...
Yeah, you can draw
yourself.
Draw those parallels right there.
A lot of what I've been noticing is even like the way that Jonny and Pietze talk and view their kid, learning how to have that be my internal voice towards myself. Like so the harsh inner critic is like, why haven't you figured that out yet? Well, maybe that's because that's what you heard as a child.
Yeah.
But like what they're teaching would be like, of course you're feeling out of control. Of course you're feeling dysregulated. Let's be curious about why. So the way that they are going to talk about regulating as parents can help you learn how to talk to yourself.
Yeah.
So.
And I will say this. A lot of people within parenting feel very powerless to their kids, or they feel like they have to dominate their kids. And there's often two extremes that happen. And this conversation is about creating an empowered family, that both the parents and kids are feeling powerful and healthy. And that's what creates safety inside of the system, where it doesn't feel like anyone's just getting dominated and ran over, but where two existing human bodies are coexisting in a healthy way. And
right before we jump into it, just letting people know that you can sign up for the Pathway to Freedom. It's a course that launched all of us on this journey. Everything we're teaching in these podcasts builds on that. And you have to do that to get into our year-long Becoming a Master Consultant class.
Yeah, so our life consulting masterclass, we've been talking about this for the last couple of weeks, but if you want to participate in that, you have to go through the Pathway to Freedom, but we created it in such a fashion that one jumps to the next, and it's really easy. And if you participate in the Pathway to Freedom and you are accepted through our application process, you'll be able to apply what you paid for the Pathway to Freedom to the life consulting masterclass.
But for all of you who don't want to do the masterclass, Pathway to Freedom is just one of the best tools that will throw your life forward.
Yeah. So you can go to Justin and Abby, that's abi.com, and you can go to our courses area and click on either the application for Life Consulting Masterclass or to sign up for the Pathway to Freedom. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, people have been asking us, what's it practically like to be an LCMC? And so recently we did a mini conference on validation. And in one of our sessions, we had some incredible encounters. And there was a lot of wonderful information that was deposited. And we thought, hey, you know what? We're going to make this specific session available for free for anyone who wants to get a deeper feeling for what LCMC is. You can click on the link in the description of this episode, and you'll be able to get that session for free. And if you're having any problems with that, You can also email us at yesplease@stumblconsulting.com, and we will send you a link to that episode, and you can watch it, have your own personal experience with it, and get some profound information out of our validation session from that mini conference. Now, without further ado, let's jump into this profound parenting conversation that you guys are having that's universally helpful for all of us. Profound.
I like how you already assume it's going to be profound. That's a lot of confidence you're having right now. I like that. That's good.
Really believe in you too.
And I guess I want to start by just saying that
how bad you are at this.
What?
How bad you are at the thing you're going to teach about.
100% I'm horrible at it. Very, very human here.
Well, just like how every parent is. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. We're all failing forward together.
Yeah.
Really. That's what it is. But, just to say a little something about pathways, everything that I'm talking about started and is birthed in and I use a lot of the concepts that we teach in pathways of how to work with my kids. And even when I'm working with parents, like when they come to me, we always are going back to the pathways stuff. Like a lot of times I won't even take people until they've been through pathways because there's no point.
You get the foundation for how humans work.
Yeah, 100%. And so just to give everybody kind of a cue in, but I think regulation is probably one of the biggest aha moments in understanding how to parent my children well, how to parent our children well. I shouldn't just claim them by myself, although sometimes I want to.
I'm pretty tired. You can take them for today.
Okay, sounds good. I'll take them. But, it's probably been the biggest tool, and not just our kids' regulation, but our own as well. And understanding how that creates a lot of times negative behavior.
Yeah.
And if we just come in, and I think I might have said this in previous podcasts, but if we just come in trying to govern the behavior, it is like mowing a weed. It's great. It might look better for a couple minutes, but it's going to grow back because you haven't actually gotten to the root of what is going on with the child and actually worked from that level up, And so understanding regulation. And when we say regulation, what we're talking about is nervous system regulation. So we all have different arousal points inside of us. And if you can kind of...
Yes,
just for those of you who are out there.
That's actually good to separate. When you say arousal, can you explain?
Yeah, totally. 100%. So we're talking about nervous system arousal. So if you can kind of picture in front of you, two horizontal lines, and then in the middle of those horizontal lines would be what we call your window of tolerance. That is where you feel regulated, where your nervous system, which is constantly taking in feedback over what's threatening and what's not threatening, over what feels overwhelming and what's not overwhelming. And when that nervous system is taking in feedback, it can go into dysregulation, which can cause you to go above the window of tolerance, which is a hyper arousal, which is where you might get big emotions. You might feel angry, frustrated, annoyed. I don't know if you guys can think of any others, but that's what comes to my mind. Anxiety.
Or you could get, you could get anxiety, like you might want to get out of your skin or get really busy, or you might start frantically cleaning.
Yeah, absolutely. And all of those are hyper arousal points. Or you can go below that window of tolerance, and that is hypo. So that would be when you are depression, where your nervous system is compressed. And
that's so you might be more still, numb. Freeze, numb, dissociated.
Yep. And somewhere in the middle is where the balance is. It's where your nervous system is adjusted. It's where you feel calm, where you feel focused, where your mind isn't even looping or getting preoccupied. It's where you're very clear, very much in the present.
Well, and so we could call window of tolerance is your green zone. That's like where you are doing good. And then if you imagine above the green zone is a red zone, and below the green zone is a red zone.
Like below the green zone would be like a blue zone almost.
Yeah. So there is that third option. This is great that Abby's bringing this up, because this is how we teach our kids about regulation.
Yeah. Oh,
we
great.
Call it. Yeah. So, and this is actually if you have a child in school, there could be a possibility that they actually know the zones of regulation, because this is something that teachers...
They might know it better than you.
Yeah, they actually might already know it. They might know it better than you, because it's something... The reason that this is important is because this is something that teachers are realizing, that until a child is regulated, they are not in a state to learn.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're not in a state to receive information. And so regulating a child becomes key. And so teaching them what regulation is becomes key. So with our kids, how we've taught them, they're called the zones of regulation. So our window of tolerance, like Abby was saying, would be the green zone. And then a red zone would be, or I should back up. Then we go into the yellow zone. And the yellow zone is almost like that warning light, just like, you know, red, yellow. I was going to say red, yellow, blue, green.
What?
I don't know how to drive.
You're talking
I
about
haven't
a
driven
street
in forever.
light.
Johnny's my chauffeur. It's showing right
It's
now.
driving Miss Daisy over here. That's really what my life is.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, I'm sorry. But, you know, it's red, yellow, and green. Our green light is our regulation zone. Green means go. We're good to move forward. Yellow is our warning light. It means we're headed towards dysregulation. So in our yellow state, we can start feeling anxious. We can start feeling nervous. We can start feeling sad. We can start feeling scared. And when we're in our yellow zone, we know that we're headed towards the red zone. We know that we're starting to get out of the window of tolerance. So it's a caution light going up. Hey, I'm starting to get out of the window of tolerance. You know, so we teach our kids like, hey, be looking for, this is what the yellow zone feels like. This is before you flip.
Yeah.
Completely into the red zone.
Honestly, it's really important to learn. And if you
It's
didn't have
developing
somebody,
deep self-awareness.
if you didn't have someone teach you this, it's hard to know. I was thinking when they were sharing that about today, how you did that so well. We had a meeting about the school.
I felt my yellow zone and I was like, I'm in the yellow. I got to get out before the red.
No, that's really true. You could feel yourself getting more and more frustrated and more and more overwhelmed.
Was a key one, yeah.
And so tell them what you did.
Yeah. So as we're working on stuff and that started like to build inside of me, I'm like, okay, I know I can feel that I'm moving towards wanting to get aggressive and intense and bark back at you and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, that means that if I don't remove myself from this moment right now, I'm going to cause a mess that I'm going to have a hard time and not a fun time cleaning up. And so in that, I calmly stood up and said, I need to go. I will be back. And I walked out of the room, didn't storm out. I patiently walked out, then found myself out behind a dumpster jumping up and down.
That's amazing. And how did you feel after you had that energy release?
And see, that's a big thing. I was talking to a client today about the idea of like oftentimes when kids throw tantrums, this plays a part in it. I said oftentimes that's them actually trying to get an energy release. They don't have language for it, but they're trying to get something out. And it's like, oh, you're just being a little brat throwing a temper tantrum. No, there's an overwhelm in their body. And so to my point is that it wasn't like I was out of control. I just went and jumped up and down. I was like, releasing that energy, and all of a sudden I was like, okay, I can get back. I can get out of like, I could feel like my brain was turning into that space where we lose clarity, and the clarity starts coming back. And as I could feel it coming back, I'm like, okay, I'm here, everything's okay. And I could feel that settling inside of myself. All right, I got that out. It didn't get trapped inside of me, so it didn't have to blow up at anyone specifically.
And then he came back in and was very calm.
It was very calm.
And it was very easy.
And at that point, it didn't mean I had full resolve. It meant I could.
You're back in
calmly,
your window of tolerance.
Yes. And I could say, I don't really have capacity for certain things, but I'm going to sit down here and chill.
You had capacity to even have a voice. Because I think when you're out of the green zone, you can't say what you need. You're just flooded.
Yeah.
And so, did you want to say something?
And that's exactly the right word. And that's what we use with our kids, is that they're flooded. And thinking of like a child drowning in their emotions and expecting them to know how to swim out of that without having any swimming lessons is setting them up for failure, because that's what's happening, is that they are flooded. They are drowning in that energy. And exactly like what happened with Justin, had he not recognized, oh, I'm in the yellow zone. I can tell if I don't take care of myself right now, that this is going to come out and I won't be able to control it. And so I'm going to pull back and I'm going to release that energy, because we have to think of emotions. We have to reframe the way that we think of emotions. And thinking of emotions tied to arousal helps you to understand that what Jonny was saying at the beginning, that this is actually energy inside of the body. And we have to know how to deal with that energy in order to get the best out of ourselves and out of our kids.
And
Which,
this is,
let me just add real quick on myself. For me, I have 2 different 4F responses. I just want to make notice people are listening, because
you probably have all of them actually.
Well, yes, absolutely. But 2 key ones that I've gone into as my primaries has been either the intensity outward, the fight, which happens, or an intense freeze where it just gridlocks down. And so in the past, and so some of you might be listening, like, oh, I never go towards blowing up. You might be go towards locking up completely, and then you just can't get anything out whatsoever.
Right. Which is actually what I was saying about you being flooded. I wasn't even talking about you freaking out. I was saying when you're flooded, you can't communicate. That overwhelms me.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
so we've had lots of problems because once you're flooded, you can't tell me it overwhelms you, and then it just keeps overwhelming you.
Yeah.
And I will say, if you are living with somebody who is dysregulated, whether it's a kid or a spouse,
which if you're living with someone, you are living with someone who's dysregulated.
But if you're struggling with it, like all of us as life consultants, we get people coming in who say the other half of my marriage isn't working.
They're the problem.
The other, right? Like they're not willing to look at themselves. They're not there's not a lot of things that you can do, but there are some. And one of the things that you can do when somebody is dysregulated, whether it's a kid or a spouse or a boss or whoever, one of the things that you can do is recognize that they are stuck, that they are drowning. Like pull your awareness to what is actually happening inside of their mind, right? Because then in that moment, especially as a parent, a lot of times what you want to do is like to just put the foot down. You know what I mean? Like the foot is officially going down, and I am going to force you into regulating yourself. Yeah. Right. Like
I'm not being regulated, by the way.
I will strong arm you into submission, into stopping crying or stopping being angry or whatever it is. Yeah. Right. And we want to do that even at times with our spouse or with other people.
With ourselves. Let's
just
be real.
Absolutely.
I want to get
right.
Yep.
And so what you want to think of is just genuinely, this is something that is happening. Justin in this moment is being flooded, right? That word is such a great word. He literally cannot see the forest for the trees, right? He can't. Yeah. What needs to happen is he needs to go somewhere else and get the energy out of his body. And this is something that Pietze's been really the champion of recently in our home with our kids, is things like, and when we were kids, I don't know about your parents, but my parents would not have gone to this, but things like, do you need to scream? Yeah. Do you need to punch a pillow? Do you need to get this energy out of your body? Because Pietze's been recognizing with both of our kids, you can't just tell them to stop feeling what they're feeling and expect that to work.
Well, if you think about emotion, you could think of it like energy, or you could think about it like a hose inside of you. So like the hose has water that needs to get released.
Yes.
Right. You cannot just say, push the water back down. Like the faucet was already turned on. The water's already in the hose.
You can't kink the hose and just expect it. Yeah.
It won't, it's not good. It has to have a release. Every emotion is energy. And that's the thing that I was going to say is I did not know that every emotion was energy in my body because I wasn't aware of my body. I had no idea what was going on inside, and I didn't know I needed releases. I'll give some examples because I think this would be helpful. Some people get releases through crying. You have a conversation, they get overwhelmed, they start crying. That's a release. Some people do a sigh. Some people laugh. The other day, me and Pietze were in a conflict, and she started laughing, and it was a way that she was releasing the tension from what was going on inside.
That's happened with us. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm not laughing at you. You don't understand.
Yeah. Some releases can be like heel stomps. We've done those before, or going and breathing, or there's so
deep pressure, Like a lot of times kids, even on a nervous system level, they need deep pressure in order to release the energy. So even if you come in and you take your hands and your thumbs and go around their limbs and squeeze really tight all up and down, what you're doing is you're giving them a nervous system reset. Think of it almost like a weighted blanket, like a strong hug sometimes can create a sense of safety, and then the release of it can feel so safe for our kids. So even we're looking at this is not an approach to parenting it's a very multifaceted. We're taking a psychobiological approach here. We're looking at what's happening inside of the body, and people always, Abby and I every year in Pathways have to give a spiel about the body because people want to write it off. And they're like, okay, get to where this actually matters. And we always keep coming back to the body going, this is where it matters. Understand it here. And then you will start to make sense of it cognitively, but you got to understand how this energy shows up in the body. So yeah, and I'll kind of come back to should I come back to the zones of regulation and then kind of pull in this energy release a little more? Yeah. So when kids are not paying attention, or parents for that matter, are not paying attention to their yellow zone, then they get emotionally flooded and go into the red zone. And when they're in that red zone, they're in that angry place, they're frustrated, or completely scared and shut down, like completely frozen, which could also be a blue zone. But, they are so flooded in the emotion, and that is your cue to stop. That is your cue to stop. That's your cue to stop and get safe. It's all about safety. And we have to think of that safety light. It's all about safety, right? So the safety light is keeping us safe. Green means I can go forward. Yellow means I really need to slow down with caution. And red means I need to stop and get safe before I proceed forward.
So basically with your kids, talk me through, like, let's say you're watching them in the red zone. What would you say to them?
Yeah. So a lot of times, I always want to try to catch it at the yellow zone first and be like, hey, Yana, it feels like you're getting to the yellow zone. And then I'll ask a question.
Could that be like whining? Like what would be yellow zone?
Yellow zone would be like she's starting to kind of get a little like antsy, and I can tell it's headed towards frustration,
maybe
and then
looping,
anger. Maybe looping
on something
a little bit more.
Maybe
my kids are starting to show nervousness, whining. Those are all yellow zone. A little bit of anxiety. It could be,
so
that could come out
not all the way to a
but
full-on freak out, right? Not gone crazy, but you can feel it going over the edge and down the slope. Right.
Yeah.
You can feel
You can just feel the rise. And most parents can tell that in their kids. Like you can tell when your kids are starting to get dysregulated, but maybe you haven't had language for that yet.
And that's the moment, just for all of you parents out there, that's the moment when you start sensing them going into dysregulation. That's normally the moment where dysregulation enters you as well. That's normally when you trigger.
Because a meltdown is happening. Oh my gosh, we're in the grocery store. I know what's coming. They're going to freak out. And how am I going to handle? So you're starting to get scared. Your nervous system is getting activated. You're getting out of that green zone, going into that yellow zone. And fear is the slide that is taking you to hell.
Yes. Which is where you
taking you to hell.
Which is where you have to.
Fear is the slide that's taking you to hell.
That's what it feels like. That's what it feels like sometimes, And so really that is that moment as a parent where even the self-recognition of going, okay, I'm scared right now.
Yeah.
I don't know where this is going to go. I'm starting to feel out of my regulation zone. I need to take a deep breath. And then I can communicate with the child. So if that's coming in, Yana, like immediately, I'm going to self-reflect first. I'm always going to care for myself first. It's like being in an airplane. Got to put your own air mask on first before you can put on the child's. Because if you're knocked out, you're not going to be no good to them.
Absolutely.
You get emotionally flooded, you are not help anymore.
Totally.
So I'm going to first come in and self-reflect. I'm going to first come in and take my deep breaths. I'm going to first have a moment of calm. I might even walk away from the situation, even if my child is disobeying me, to go give myself a moment before I come, as long as they're being safe.
Yeah.
Like let's say I say, hey, get off the iPad, get off the iPad, get off the iPad. Not listening. They're starting to get dysregulated. I might go, I need to take a deep breath, calm back down, accept that this is happening right now, so that then I can come back into this regulated and ready to deal with. And when I'm regulated, there's no contingency on where their journey is going to go. I'm not like, I can handle this as long as they obey me. I'm like, this might result in a meltdown, and I've accepted that, and I'm ready to deal with that.
Right. Instead of, I'm going to wrestle them into doing the thing I need them to do.
Well, because most of the time what we do is we're wrestling through our own resistance. So we're using our resistance to their state to try to wrestle them and strong arm them into not doing it. And all it does is push them further out.
Absolutely. Because you can feel resistance. And really, everybody responds to safety and love. So when you feel accepted and wanted, versus feeling your parent's resistance. So if my parent is coming to me and they're in the green zone, that means their relationship circuits are on. That means they are there to see me. They can be curious. They can actually seek to understand. And that energy is more welcoming. When you're trying to just force your kids to do something, you're often in energy that is pushing them away.
Let me put it like this. I have an example. So we were staying at a friend's house. They had a dog there, and the dog went bolting out the door and decided to go run around. And I'm like, hey, I'm trying to call this dog over. And the more that this dog isn't listening and I can't get it to come back to me, the more my frustration and anxiety is going up, the more I'm going into a murderous rage internally and going to end this dog's life, right? And the more that I do that, the more this dog keeps running away. No matter how calm I present myself externally, like, come back here. And it's like, no way.
The dog is running away on the street from Justin, and Justin is chasing the dog.
And now I'm just running down the street after, like, get back here.
And he's yelling at the dog. And I was like, there's no way this dog wants to come.
And I was like, yeah, sure. I'll turn around and come back. This seems like a great idea.
Yeah, you
come
seem
back towards
safe.
the angry man.
Yeah, totally.
Exactly. And Abby comes out because I'm feeling so panicky. I've lost any semblance of wisdom at this point. She comes out with a bag of like pretzel things. She's like, here, calm down and hold this out.
Just lead the dog with some treats.
And so I literally internally started being like, I'm not going to win this until I can get myself at peace. And the dog's still watching me like, are you really okay? What's happening here? But finally we are able to get it to take a bite and then keep eating until it's closer. And I get it. And I get to walk the dog back in. But again, it's a sense of like when we're in this dysregulation, like this, we're actually driving the situation just like that. The dog senses it, alert, threat zone. It's just going to exacerbate it and it wants to get away.
And you got to think of that in terms of energy.
Yes.
If I come at an energy that feels unsafe, I'm not going to attract that dog towards me.
Exactly.
I'm actually just repelling them away. And really, resistance is a form of fear. Right. And when I'm in fear, I'm not being the parent in the situation.
Yeah.
Because what I'm communicating to my kids subconsciously is that I'm afraid of their emotions.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I'm afraid of their behavior. I'm afraid of their emotions. And when I'm in fear, they go, well, if you're afraid, then I'm afraid. And I don't trust you. And I'm not going to listen to a word you're saying.
Totally.
You know?
Yep.
And that's why when people feel strong-armed into having to see a point of view or having to change or having to, oftentimes it creates resistance because it doesn't feel safe. Does that make sense? So there's a martial arts term, and this is basically the entire analogy with the dog, where basically they tell people you yield to overcome. You yield to your opponent to overcome.
Is this a Ninja Turtles reference, or is
you know what it might be? Because Moses is getting into Ninja Turtles, and I'm loving my 90s kid heart is loving it. Splinter. I'll just be Splinter for a minute. You yield to overcome, my sons. My sons.
Oh gosh.
But really, that's what you're doing is you're yielding to the situation to actually overcome the situation. And so that's how I think of acceptance. It's not that you're saying that it's going to stay the same and that you're being permissive. What you're saying is that I'm accepting that this is where things are at right now.
It's good.
And once I've accepted that, then I can calm myself. And once I can calm myself, then I can figure out how I want to problem solve the situation.
So good.
If that makes sense. And so really when our kids get into that red zone, like you guys were saying, a lot of times for a lot of these things, for all of the zones, and I will say there is one third zone, which if we're thinking of that window of tolerance in the middle and like maybe the yellow and then the red above, below would be the blue zone. And the blue zone would be where our kids get bored, where they can feel depressed or sluggish, and where numb, they're kind of going into shutdown mode. That's hypoarousal, and really there can be a yellow going into that blue.
Right. Yeah. There's a transition either direction.
Yeah. And a lot of times when kids have been strong-armed
can
enough.
we just be, I'm wanting parents to know what they can teach their kids. Do they teach their kids the red, yellow, blue, green?
Yeah. So
we normally don't use blue, or we don't use red to describe like sadness, because red, it, like even if you, for parents out there, if you have the spot of emotions, which is like, it's a little book series that comes with these cute little stuffed animals. There's a lot of different colors. And when you think of red, you think of big, you think of anger. Like for a lot of kids, red, you think of like you could even draw a red-faced,
right?
Like the rage, the anger, the big emotions.
Right.
And then sadness, we go, to blue. And maybe it's just an Inside Out reference from Disney. I don't really know. Maybe that's what it's coming from. Who knows?
But that is actually, if your kids like Inside Out, it's a great reference to use. But we're teaching our kids all of the different zones. So we're teaching them what it feels like. We're teaching them, even when I'm drawing this out for my kids, I'll get construction paper and do, okay, this is the red zone. In the red zone, I'm angry. I'm upset. I feel mad. I feel scared. I feel... and we're drawing all the pictures of the faces that go along with that.
That's so
and then
smart.
When my kids have the emotion, I actually take them over to the feelings chart and to the zones of regulation and say, show me which face you're feeling. I'm feeling angry. Where's that in the zones of regulation? It's on yellow. Okay, it's on red. Okay, so you must be feeling, that must feel awful. You're in a red zone. In a red zone, it can feel really scary. It can feel really overwhelming. Like we are identifying the reality that's happening within them. And by me coming in and attuning like that, again, I'm not permissing the behavior, but what I'm doing is I'm creating co-regulation, and I'm creating attunement with them.
Right.
That we are being honest about what the reality is in front of us and where they're at. And that's an important skill to have in knowing how to regulate your emotions and not be reactive, but be able to respond.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
So do you have an example of a time you told Moses or Yana where, like, what's going on, and then they could point out what they were feeling?
Oh, yeah. I mean, definitely, like, right off the top of my head, I can think of, like, cleaning is a really hard
cleaning
thing
is such a...
for Yana. And usually, like, we do all of the right things. So we do, like, coping ahead skills, which would be like, hey.
You guys talked about this in the last episode.
Yeah. So talked about cleaning.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So it's a big hot button thing. So when she's getting dysregulated and she's starting to feel it, I'm like, hey, Yana, it seems like you're getting to the yellow zone.
We normally start with asking questions.
Yeah.
What are you feeling right now? Because we're trying, one of the things you're trying to do is help them learn it on their own.
Yes.
Right? Because you want to empower them long-term to be able to identify what's going on. And so we normally start the process with asking questions. What are you, obviously not initially, right? Initially, it's learning the language. You don't ask questions if they don't know the language.
Totally.
But once they've gotten the concepts, we oftentimes start with asking questions. Okay, talk to me about what you're feeling.
Right. So you had to have previously taught them to know what feelings are what.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So we spend a long time with them
working on the concepts.
On how do I identify emotions inside me? And then we label emotions a lot for them. That's how we started. Oh, you're feeling angry. Oh, you're feeling overwhelmed right now. Wow, you must be really, I bet that there's something scary right now that you're feeling, because I intuitively could tell from working through my own journey what was happening inside of them.
Yeah.
Then we're teaching the zones of regulation. So when we get into that moment, we have common language and an understanding of what the reality is and what's happening in that moment between us. It's a way of creating communication and a bridge of communication between us in an emotionally flooded moment. Does that make sense?
So in the moment you're pointing out something.
Yeah, even on a situation this week. This is an ongoing thing, this cleaning thing. And we said it on the last podcast. It's because it's like a every 2 days
every day.
fight in our house.
Totally.
And so, even this week, big meltdown. We're just trying to tidy up the living room, and it's a huge meltdown. And it went to the yellow zone first.
Yeah.
It did. But it went right from the yellow zone into the red zone.
Yeah.
Right. We were not able to pull it back, and it was spinning out, you know? And so we started just by asking questions. Okay, we're going to pause. And that's one thing that you do have to do. If you're going to have a regulated home, I think we talked about this in the first or second episode, it is a time requirement. It is a capacity requirement. You actually have to pause what you're doing and have a conversation rather than just yelling at your kid in the same energy that they're in, right? You're in the red zone too. And you actually have to pause and take the time. So we pause, and I'm dysregulated, probably more than Pietze is, because I'm just like so frustrated that we have to have this whole thing. I don't like cleaning either.
Yes.
You know, but I'm
like,
just,
I hate this. You and me both,
Pietze's gonna
sister.
go crazy, you know? So it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing, and poor Moses in the midst of it. But so I'm dysregulated, so I let Pietze take it, right? And that's one thing that we have a rule in our house.
Yeah, it's called the tap out rule.
Our tap out rule. If one of us is dysregulated, we're not going to try to communicate with our kids out of that dysregulation. Now, we're not perfect in this. Obviously, I can think of 3 other examples this week where I didn't do this.
Yep.
But we have the tap out rule, so I tap out. And Pietze comes in and starts asking Yana questions.
Yeah, so I just came in and I was like, what are you feeling? Why are you? And then she could tell me.
What'd she say?
So she could say, I'm feeling really angry. So then I'm like, oh, so you feel in the red zone right now. Yes, I'm in the red zone. And then I'm creating validation. Oh, that would feel really awful to feel in the red zone. I hate feeling in the red zone. Do you know why you're feeling in the red zone? She's like, because I don't want to clean. We're going to have to. And she goes really exaggerative. I'm going to clean the rest of my life.
She always goes to like really big stuff.
Yeah, like, are we just going to clean every day? And I'm like, yeah, we're going to clean every day, you know? But sometimes I'll even make a joke and go, oh my goodness, for the rest of your life cleaning? And right away, like that usually will break her.
Right.
Like,
Which is her
I'm not
sense
doing
of
it.
humor.
Yeah. And I'm not doing it in a like trying to
You're not
provoke
making
her
fun
way,
of her.
but into like laughing about like how funny it is. Like, you know, just creating, I'm not scared of you being exaggerative.
Yes.
I'm not scared of you being in the red zone, you know? So sometimes in that situation, this didn't happen on this occasion, but sometimes in that situation, she needs that physical release even before we can talk about it. So I'll be like, do you need to go hit a pillow? And sometimes she'll respond, sometimes she won't. And I'll actually say, I think we need to hit a pillow. And we'll put pillows on her bed. And then I kneel beside her and she kneels. And I go crazy hitting the pillow. And then I say, now you try it. And she goes crazy. And it usually ends up in us laughing.
Yeah.
Because once that energy release comes and her system calms, then she can go into a playful release. You know, and that's like being back in the yellow zone. It's kind of like coming down that laugh is to me is like, she's still not focused and ready to clean, but she's coming down, if that makes sense.
It's a great example.
Another
happened
thing
this
that you can do, in that moment, just because I know we're not going to come back to it, but you do think it's important, is put your kids in timeout. And I don't mean that as a punishment, but I mean as you need to sit down and calm down before we can talk. However, this is the most successful when you are willing to model that same humility for them and put yourself in timeout when you are dysregulated.
Which is
and
like what Justin
often.
This is literally what Justin did in our business meeting. We have
Full-grown
all of our
man
employees. All of our employees are in the room, and he's like, I'm going to take a timeout.
Yeah.
Yep.
But what if everybody who's listening to this podcast who has kids taught their kids this one thing, and every one of their kids went into adulthood knowing how to take a timeout when their emotions were big? If they left with nothing else but that, how much change would that bring in relationships, right? Just the simple ability to walk away and calm down.
Well, and really it comes back to the point of like, we're always trying to hold our kids to a standard that we hold ourselves to.
So good.
Yes.
We're not trying to hold them to standards that like, hey, you can't lose it emotionally and you need to hold it together, but I can do whatever I want because I'm the adult and I'm the queen of this house.
It's so good.
You know, I'm like, no, in humility, I'm holding myself. I expect the same out of myself that I expect out of you. And if I don't meet those expectations of what I expect out of myself, I'll come back and clean it up. And I expect you to too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is,
this
is brilliant parenting. You parent by modeling.
Yeah.
Kids learn more from what you do than what you say anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it does
100%.
And And yeah, it is harder. And I want to say out there, like, you don't have to be perfect at parenting. You're not going to be. And that's why I love what we're talking about. It's messy parenting where you're learning the skills, but you're creating a pathway, if you will, with your children. You're creating a pathway from like, okay, I messed that up, but I'm going to come back. I need to take a timeout. It's learning to practice the things, and it takes a while. It's taken me, I would say, like probably 4 years. Now, if I would have had all the information in front of me, like we are consolidating for people, I could have got there so much faster.
Nicely handing to people right now.
Took me 4 years. But like before me and Justin started walking away really well in the yellow zone, because we had to learn our yellow zones. We had to get over all of our resistance to walking away.
Yeah.
Yes.
We had to learn how to come back. But that idea, the more you model, and this is what I tell people when they have a spouse that they're frustrated with, when they have a kid that they're frustrated with, when they have an employee that they're frustrated with, my first question is, are you modeling it? Because people will often mirror you. The truth is, if you get better and better at putting yourself in timeout, it gives the other person permission, and it starts to teach them that that's normal, and it starts to create a culture.
Someone has to initiate the modeling, and kids are never going to do that.
Yes,
we just need to understand 100%. That your kid will never. To learn. They're here to learn. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's our job to teach.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like that.
And that really becomes the goal, you know?
It's like that for me as a leader inside of my business and stuff like that. Like I'm like, it doesn't feel fun. It feels pretty effing terrible sometimes to have to be the bigger person. That, you know, that's the narrative we have. I have to be the bigger person. No, it's like, I'm in a leadership position, and I'm going to model what I want in this. And this is how I get to be powerful inside of this situation.
Right. Yeah. Right. And really how we're talking about timeouts here is that timeouts are not punishment. They're a form of self-care.
Yes.
Yeah. It's good.
They're
not punishment.
It's not about, for years I learned that boundaries were like, are you good or bad? Are you a villain? If you're a villain, I need to set a boundary with you.
Right.
And so we spend a lot of energy trying to decide if people are good or bad, instead of, how am I regulated? So Justin, it's not, is he good or bad? Do I need a boundary from him? It's am I in my yellow zone? He could be good or bad. He could be doing any kind of behavior. It's more, what zone am I in? And what do I need to do to keep myself in green?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there is times, like there's definitely times where sometimes, and people think like, oh, I'm not validating everything that my kid is doing. I'm actually still holding a boundary very firm. So let's say, you know, Yana is dysregulated about cleaning. I'm not saying, oh, you don't want to clean. Okay, you don't have to clean. It's too much for you.
Yep.
No, what it becomes in that moment is I'm recognizing that we need more skills to help her to feel safe around cleaning, and that's going to take time. But she still needs to clean.
Yes.
And I might even cater how I am helping her clean in order to understand where she's at in regulation. But I'm saying, even if she gets upset, I can validate that feeling and go, I'm so sorry that you feel that way. And I'm open to what can we do to make this fun? Or what can I do to make this better for her on a sensory level? But I'm so sorry. You still have to clean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was even part of the very story that we were talking about.
Yeah.
Is, you know, one of the steps Pietze took next was not just asking her what she's feeling, but investigating deeper. You know, obviously we're both life consultants, so that's like, you know,
second nature,
what we do. But if you can learn this with your kids, of digging deeper for their sake, helping them understand. So Pietze goes, okay, one of the questions she asks is, what is it about cleaning that is feeling so, what was her emotion? Angry?
Yeah.
What is it about cleaning? So she's identified the emotion. I'm feeling angry about cleaning. Why do you feel angry about cleaning? Normally she doesn't know right away.
Yeah.
You know, so we sit with it a little bit. We talk a little bit. Okay, let's talk about this. What is it that you don't like about it? You know, rephrase the question. If they're not getting to it from the first one, rephrase the question. What is it about cleaning? Why don't you like it? And she said, and we both just laughed so hard. She says, the jobs you give me are too hard, which is, if you knew the kind of jobs we give her, it's like putting your stuffies into their bin, or, you know, like putting your laundry into the basket.
Right.
And we just started laughing. Oh gosh.
And I kind of joked with her, oh, I'm giving like the jobs I'm giving you are too hard. And she like laughed.
Which she wanted to work with me because apparently I give her easier jobs.
That's funny.
But in humility, I need to come down and recognize that she's actually giving me information right there. The jobs I'm giving her feel too hard for her to do them on her own, which it makes her feel probably overwhelmed. Probably gives her a lot of anxiety because she's going to get in trouble if she doesn't do the job. And that makes her feel trapped, which feels, what would that make you feel? Oh, angry. That would make you feel angry. And so right there, I came down and we didn't solve it in that moment because we were having a conversation and then it kind of shifted into something. But I was able to come back and go, okay, I'm taking this information. She might need more help and I need to rethink how I'm having her clean. You know, like I need to rethink what jobs I'm having her do, because my point in having my kids clean is that they learn how to be well-functioning adults.
Yes.
Great thing that I want for them. I want them to be functioning humans. Great thing. Totally want that for my kids.
Yeah.
But how I get there is by teaching them how to be functioning humans.
Yes.
I have to teach in a way that they can learn. It is not their job to learn towards my style of teaching.
It's good, Pietze.
And how I want to do it.
Well, and it's not their job to do everything you say and be completely unaffected by your energy. Right? Because most people had a parent who in complete dysregulation would scream at them to clean up their room. And then get mad at you for being dysregulated. Now, that wasn't as much my experience. My house was a very quiet house in a lot of regards.
They were blue zone people.
We were more blue zone people, right? But there's a lot of people with that experience, and we cannot expect our kids to be unaffected by our energy as well, right? Which is where, even circling back to where we started this story, which is the second they're entering the yellow zone, your first thought should not be about what's going on with them. Your first thought should be about what's going on with me.
Yeah.
That's good.
And even, coming back to that energy release, there have been times where Yana has, in the midst of a complete meltdown. I mean, when she is over flooded.
She's red.
Red. That means that she is screaming at the top of her lungs sometimes. For long periods of time, crying really hard. You can tell though in seeing her, she's fidgety, like she can't sit still.
She'll grit her teeth.
Will grit her teeth. She'll, shake, tense up all of her muscles.
Trying to get to release.
That energy release. So sometimes when that has happened, I'll sit with her on the couch and she'll put her feet on me and start to press like she's kicking. And people think that kids are kicking when they're doing that. Actually, what they're doing is they're creating deep pressure for their nervous system.
Yeah.
Kids do this a lot. If you sit next to kids, they will like
push
fidget on you or push against you. They're actually naturally, intuitively trying to regulate their nervous system, And so I knew that. Now, sometimes she was getting too aggressive and I was like, hey, you can press your feet on me. I don't mind, but that's too much. So I created the boundary with it. That's too much. If you need to do that, I'll put a pillow right here.
Right.
And then you can do it, So good, so I created the boundary, but I knew that she needed that release in order to get the energy out before she could come into a state where she was ready to learn.
You've said multiple times, you've used the word boundary inside of this conversation. I want to kind of dive a little bit further into that if it's okay, because I think that a lot of teaching around children and connecting with their emotions comes without boundaries. And that's where parents feel like they've become a doormat and they're getting walked all over. What is the power of boundaries? Like, what does that do inside of a child's nervous system and stuff?
And maybe you could tell the Moses story too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important that even the data shows that kids actually need parenting that is centered around authority. There's actually so much data that has come out around how it feels the safest and most regulating to kids to have strong authority. Now, that's not a dictatorship and it's not authoritarian. It's authority-based parenting.
Somebody needs to be steering the ship.
It needs to
not be the kid.
like someone feels like life isn't out of control.
Someone knows what they're doing here.
Someone knows what they're doing here.
Absolutely.
Which I know a lot of parents that are like, I don't know what I'm doing here. You can fake that
100%.
energy.
Yeah. And so when I am coming into the situation and I am just popping off at my kid, yelling at them, like, I don't care if you're angry about cleaning. You need to just do
what
it.
I said.
What I'm telling my kid, because I am being now pulled into their vortex of dysregulation, it comes down to I'm not actually setting a boundary with them. I'm flooded in with them, drowning.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
now
I have no authority in that situation.
And now you aren't safe for them because you're in it with them.
I can't rescue them.
You don't
I can't
actually
help pull
feel
them to
more
safety.
powerful than them. Oftentimes adults feel like anger will give them back power.
Yeah, it does.
They feel powerless to their kids. So if I yell at you, then I'll be back in control. But that's not what really gives you power. Being able to regulate yourself is what really gives you power.
100%. And so even with kids and their emotions, they need to be attuned to and they need to be validated for what they're feeling. And then equally speaking, they also need to know that there's boundaries around what they're feeling. And so if they're acting in their anger, coming in and saying, hey, I can't allow you to punch me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I know that you're angry, but you can punch a pillow. Doing things like that communicates to the child, not only am I safe because this parent isn't afraid that I need to punch something, but also they're going to keep me from hurting someone else or myself.
Yeah, it's
And
good.
kids intuitively know that. It's just like we gave an example a couple podcasts ago about how, we told Jana, hey, you can't watch YouTube because you're not protecting your heart and it's making you scared. And she came to us and said, can you please hide this?
Yeah.
Because she actually appreciated the boundary because she recognized that it made her feel safe. And when they can recognize the safety and boundaries, they intuitively want them.
Absolutely.
Well, it's like having guardrails on a cliff.
Oh, totally.
You know what I mean? They know that there's something that's going to stop them from going over the edge. They actually, even if they resist it initially, they need to have a certain level of safety in that.
Yeah. And even if you come into the situation, sometimes I have this saying that is, it's always connection before correction.
Yeah.
And I really do believe that that's true. Our kids need to know that there's connection first. And then once they get to that green zone, then we can go into correction in that teaching moment. But, sometimes you don't have the ability to have a connection moment right in that moment. Sometimes you need to come in with a firm boundary. And a good example of this is recently we went camping and Moses, our son, and his cousin were playing down by the lake. And I said, hey, I want you guys to play here for 10 minutes and then I'll come back down and get you and I don't want you to come up to the campsite because daddy's backing in the trailer and I need to know where you guys are at.
Right.
So they said, okay. So I go up and I'm helping back the trailer. Well, if it's not 4 minutes later, who do I see standing right behind
the trailer?
The two boys. So immediately I'm scared, right? So I react in that moment, but this is a good reaction, right? Because I'm using healthy fear. That was a healthy reaction. So I yell at them and say, boys, come here now. I was very stern.
Right.
And
We're not talking they left their socks on the couch.
Right.
No.
We're talking they could get run over and die.
Yes.
Yeah.
Healthy fear.
Yeah. Healthy fear. So I'm like, boys, come here now. They come. And I said, what are you guys doing up here? And they said, oh, I don't know. We just came. We got bored. And so we just came up. And I said, okay, you did not listen to what I had to say. I need you guys to sit down right now. Yeah. I do not want you to talk. I need you to sit down. I need to finish helping dad back up this trailer and then we will talk.
Yes.
So right away, that's my boundary. Yep. Do not talk. And then one of them went to ask me a question. I said, I'm not talking right now.
Totally.
I said, I can't talk right now.
Why? Because you're in your yellow zone.
I was in my yellow zone and I'm like, I can't. They wanted to start talking about it. And I'm like, I can't right now. I need to back this up. Yep. We will talk about it. So now I could tell that while they did disobey me right away, and that was not okay, it would have felt really scary to have that type of tone coming from me and to feel like all love was removed from the situation. So I went, as soon as I was done backing up the trailer, and I went off and I pulled a Justin.
Did some time out.
Yep. I took a time out and I did some deep breathing because I had fear in my body.
Yeah.
You know, I even used some of our steps that we teach in Pathway. And I was like, really understanding how afraid I was and how that was showing up and what was going on. I calmed down and I came back into the situation and I first created connection because I want to get their brains online. I want to get them. I have to recognize I was just afraid and yelled at them. They're afraid. They're not ready to learn. So even if I go,
that's what we want to do. We want to go lecture them so that they'll never do that again. So that, and we often use, so we're looking for a release, right? Like you felt fear. So your body tensed up with fear. And what most of us do is the release we want to do is to yell or be grumpy or dysregulated. So I think if I preach at them, it will help. That's how I'm going to release my emotion. It'll protect us. Then I will come down to green because I yelled at them. And because now they will know, and because really we're trying to get to safety. Green represents safety, and I will only feel safe if I feel like my kids will never do this again. So I yell at them to release my emotions and to get me to safety, but it's not real safety because your kids can't learn in that style at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like, I mean, even like we were talking about with teachers, they're learning neurologically that kids cannot learn if they're not in the green zone. And I think what the misconception is, and I think a lot of our parents had this in their styles, is that if you teach out of a big emotion, it will imprint on the kid's memory, right? And it does, but what you find often is the thing that imprints on the kid's memory is not the lesson to be learned, but the emotion coming from the parent.
Yeah, so the anger, the disappointment, the aggression.
So they just remember that dad was pissed off. They don't really remember
the lesson.
What exactly the lesson was.
They just know they don't want to piss dad off ever again, especially if it's big enough, right?
Right.
Or some of them don't even pay attention because they just lost it. They just connect from it and they do it again.
Together.
Yeah, they went into shutdown mode and they're just shut down. You know, so they might seem compliant, but really their nervous system has collapsed.
Yeah.
Into that hypoarousal.
Can you wrap up with what you did with Moses and
Yeah. So, you know, really what I did is I came back and once I had worked through my emotion and released it, and I came back ready for connection because I knew that they were probably really scared, you know? And so Moses immediately, as I'm walking up, he's like, Mom, are you mad? And I was like, I was mad. I'm not showing fear around big emotions. I want to actually validate that was the reality. I was very mad.
It's good.
Yeah.
You know, and I said, yeah, I was mad. I felt really scared when I saw you guys behind the trailer. And it immediately turned to anger that you guys didn't listen to what I said. And that probably felt really scary. And Moses said, yeah, it did, you know. And he was able to connect to it. Yeah, that felt really scary. And I said, yeah, I was really scared too. That felt really scary to me that you guys disobeyed me and went directly where I told you not to, you know? And so immediately Moses went, Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I forgot. I wasn't thinking. And I said, that totally happens. And I get it. Sometimes we do lose track, but it is important that when Mom says something that you're paying attention and that you're understanding that there's reasons why I'm saying it, or that you cue in first and go, hey, let's ask Mom if I can be up here before I do that.
Totally.
You know? And that right there, he came in totally repentant. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You know? And I was like, honey, I totally get it. And I was just scared. And I was like, do you need to hear anything from me to feel safe? And he's like, are you mad at me? And I'm like, no, I'm not mad. I feel like it's okay. We made it through. Jesus was protecting you guys. Like, we're good. I've calmed down from my anger.
Oftentimes in a more complicated situation, you might need to sit down and have a conversation about exactly why they need to do what they weren't doing. You know, in that situation, it was a little more clear. Like, it's a very easy explanation. We don't want you to get run over by the truck.
Right.
But sometimes you do actually have to spend some time really simplifying, thinking through what you're going to say and how you're going to say, because you do want to convey like what it is that they did, so that their mind has something to walk away with.
Yeah.
Right.
Once they're calm, once you are in the green and they're in the green, then they do need the logic to understand what happened but we have to do emotion to emotion before we do logic.
Yeah.
And one thing I will say on that, we were talking about modeling. I do think modeling is one of the most important things. And our kids are really quick to apologize.
Because
and the
you
reason
guys
they're
are.
because we apologize to them
Mhm.
quite a bit, and we
Mhm.
apologize to each other quite a bit.
Well,
Yeah.
not just that, part of it too, and I will just say this to finish, but part of it too is that, oftentimes, and I'm not against, there are times where your kids have to have consequences.
Yes.
And our kids
Yes.
have consequences
Mhm.
when they
Absolutely.
disobey. But we don't use punishment as a form to govern them. And oftentimes when we're just using punishment, what happens is that it takes away our kids' conscience, because now their emotions are
Right.
shifting from reflection of what they did to I'm now the
Right.
victim in the situation because I'm being punished.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, because reflection is super necessary, and punishment doesn't really cause reflection. Oftentimes, it's just like, how do I just not get away? How do I not have that punishment happen again, or how can I hide
Yeah.
it better? Or all kinds
Well, and a
of
lot of
things
times
like that.
for kids, it turns into mom's now mean
Yeah.
because I'm grounded.
Instead of
rather
like,
than
oh,
I'm focused on what I did
Right.
that created even fracture in the relationship,
It's really
and
good.
so we've really tried to cultivate that conscience in our kids that when they
Mhm.
feel that, we're like, actually, that's a good thing. Remorse is a good thing when
Yep.
we create fracture and we come back and we clean it up. And it's
Mhm.
safe to say, I'm sorry.
Yes.
It's
Right.
so safe to say you're sorry, because we're all human and we come back to that common humanity piece.
Mhm.
I'll
You
add,
know?
I'll add this as we wrap it up here. Even in this scenario here again, you have Moses, who's 6 years old, right?
Yep.
He's 6 years old, and he's like, "I'm sorry, Mom," and he's able to articulate both how he felt and connect with you on what you're feeling and stuff like that. That's because the work's being done. It's not an impossible thing, and it's not because you guys are so profound at it. It's just that you're choosing to engage it and put in the extra effort. But long term, you have the potential for an adult who's able to powerfully navigate life. And oftentimes, many of us as adults don't take on some of the greatest dreams that we have inside of our lives, whether it be in relationships, business, or opportunities, all because of we don't know how to manage our emotions, and then they end up managing us. But what you're doing is setting up a lifetime style of success where
Yes.
both from the humility and the ability to learn and then the ability to communicate. I mean, like, it's costing you a lot up front, but the payoff is enormous on the back end of the whole situation. And I think that that's something that people have to really take away from this whole thing, is that it's really possible and you don't have to be perfect at it. It's just about getting on the right train and moving forward.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll say is that you're talking about modeling it with your kids. One thing that I heard from a lot of kids growing up is that they only saw their parents fight or never saw them fight at all. And then divorces happen and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think one of the key influences is being able to model it in the marriage, in the relationship, where kids can watch and go like, I'm seeing mom and dad do it with each other too. And them doing that says, this is how I can live life. And so that's a extra food for thought, is like, can we start with our relationship and learn that? Now,
some of you are out there feeling so overwhelmed as you're listening to this episode because you're like, there's so many things to remember. This is nothing of how I grew up. This is not natural to me. I've never done this before.
I'm messing it up with my kids.
I'm messing it up with my husband. I don't have a husband. I'm messing it up with my friends. And so one of the things there's a couple things. Pick one thing to learn and grow on. This is why people love Pathway. This is our most common feedback, is that we break it down practically and so simply, and then we have you practice it over and over and over again so that your brain can... You can't just change everything about how you operate in your entire system at once. No. And you do need, like, the same way that we're saying kids need to be taught these skills, parents need to be taught these skills. And if you're a parent and you haven't been taught, that means as a kid you weren't taught by your parents.
You didn't get.
Which means you now need some people to help you reparent. And so the Pathway is a great tool. Whatever phase in life you're in, it's a way to begin reparenting. I'm letting somebody teach me about my emotions and how to deal with them so that I have a pathway that feels clear enough, and I'm doing it in bite-sized pieces. The same way Yana felt overwhelmed by doing too big of things with her cleaning. We've broken down pathways to be so that there's small enough steps that you can start.
That's good.
Yeah.
to actively learn how to manage your emotions.
Yeah.
So anybody can learn this, and it's a great tool. If you're single, do the course so that you can start the journey. So by the time you get married and have kids, you can be great at this. If you already have kids, now's the time to do it. Don't lose any. If you're dating, I always say this is the best thing to do if you want to get married ever.
And the truth is, at the end of the day, even if you've already raised all your kids and stuff, this is a way to repair maybe some of the bridges that broke down inside of the relationship, because you can go, oh, I can see how I didn't do things well, which is normal. We're human, we're messy, and I can figure out how to repair something inside of me and model it moving forward in my later years and become express aspects of parenting that I didn't get to. I could do it now and show up really well. So it's never too late for you.
No, share this episode with other people that need to hear it, to go on their healing journey, to throw them forward. You guys are the biggest instigators of spreading the word.
Yeah. So Jonny Pietze, thanks for joining us again today. Thanks everybody for listening. Like she said, rate, review, subscribe, and share. All right. Looking forward to our next conversation. Bye now.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.